The rain hammered against the penthouse window like accusations from a god we'd both forgotten, and in that storm-swept Manhattan moment, as my fingers traced the curve of her spine during what was supposed to be an innocent massage, Jordan's breath hitched. A sound so raw it cracked the fragile shell of my denial. I froze, my hands still on her warm skin, the scent of lavender oil mingling with the sharp tang of her fierce sweat, and realized with a gut punch that this wasn't just comfort anymore. It was the spark that would torch everything we'd built. 3 years of stolen glances in boardrooms, late-night texts disguised as work emails, and now this. Her body arching under my touch like it had been waiting lifetimes for permission to betray us both. I pulled back, heart slamming against my ribs, but Jordan twisted toward me, her dark eyes locking onto mine with a desperation that mirrored the chaos outside. "Valerie," she whispered, voice breaking like the thunder rolling over the East River. "Don't stop. Please." We were in her Upper East Side apartment, the kind of place that screamed old money and new lies, polished marble floors, abstract art from galleries I'd never afford, and a king-sized bed in the next room that had never felt her alone. She'd called me over after a brutal day in court. Her latest case, a custody battle where she'd fought tooth and nail for a queer couple against a judge with a Bible on his bench. "Just a massage," she'd said on the phone, her tone laced with exhaustion. "My shoulders are killing me from all the tension." I'd agreed because that's what friends do, or so I told myself, ignoring the way my pulse quickened at the invitation. But friends don't let their thumbs linger on the dip of a lover's lower back. Don't inhale the curve of a neck like it's oxygen after drowning. Jordan was everything I wasn't. Poised, pedigreed, the daughter of a Wall Street titan and a socialite who chaired fundraisers for traditional values campaigns. At 28, she was already a rising star at her father's firm, defending corporations by day and quietly funding LGBTQ+ shelters by night. A tightrope walk that left her bruised in ways bruises don't show. Me? Valerie Rivera, 26, a freelance illustrator scraping by in a Brooklyn walk-up, sketching protest posters for causes that paid in exposure and empty fridges. We'd met 2 years ago at a gala for marriage equality. Her in a tailored black gown that hugged her athletic frame like a secret, me in thrift store jeans feeling like an intruder. One shared eye roll at a politician's hypocrisy, and we'd been orbiting each other ever since, close enough to feel the heat, far enough to pretend it was platonic. Now, with her silk robe slipping off one shoulder, exposing the faint scar from a childhood equestrian accident, I felt the orbit collapse. "This is dangerous," I murmured, my voice steadier than I felt, as I wiped oil from my hands on a towel. Jordan sat up fully, crossing her legs beneath her, the robe pooling around her like spilled ink. Rain blurred the city lights into halos, casting her face an ethereal glow, high cheekbones sharp as her wit, full lips parted in that way that made my stomach twist. "Dangerous how?" she challenged, but her eyes betrayed her. Wide, searching, the polished lawyer cracking to reveal the girl who'd once confessed, over too many glasses of Pinot at a rooftop bar, that her first crush was on her best friend's sister in high school, a memory she'd buried under layers of debutante balls and daddy's expectations. I stood, pacing to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass as if it could ground me. Below, taxis splashed through puddles on Park Avenue, oblivious to the storm brewing in this room. "You know how. Your family. The firm. Everything you fought for." It wasn't just words. It was the echo of every late-night argument we'd skirted. Every time she'd pulled away after a hug lingered too long. Her father, Richard Hale, wasn't just wealthy. He was a kingmaker funding senators who blocked bills protecting people like us. Jordan had clawed her way into his world by being indispensable, brilliant, discreet, the perfect heir. To admit this to us would be to risk it all. And me? I had nothing to lose except her, which felt like everything. She rose then, graceful as a dancer, and crossed the room in 3 steps, her bare feet silent on the rug. When she stopped inches from me, the air thickened, charged like the atmosphere before lightning. "I've been fighting for them my whole life, Valerie. For once, I want to fight for me." Her hand reached out, tentative, brushing my arm, fingers callous from years of gripping briefs and bridles, a reminder of the world she straddled. I turned, our breaths mingling, and in that suspended second I saw it. The fragility beneath her strength, the way her jaw trembled not from cold but from the weight of unspoken truths. I could walk away, preserve the lie we'd both clung to, or I could lean in and damn the consequences. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable. A slow collision of lips that tasted of salt and rain-scented fear. Her hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the press of her body against mine, the soft hitch of her gasp as my fingers threaded into her hair. It wasn't fire. It was a flood washing away pretenses, leaving us raw and exposed. We broke apart only when thunder rattled the panes, both of us laughing breathlessly, the sound edged with hysteria. God, what are we doing? I whispered, forehead against hers. Living, she replied, simple and shattering. But as we sank onto the couch, her head on my shoulder, the rain easing to a patter, I couldn't shake the shadow at the edges. This wasn't a beginning. It was a detonation, and the fallout would bury us both. The fallout started subtly, like cracks in fine china you don't notice until the whole thing shatters. By morning the storm had cleared, leaving Manhattan crisp and unforgiving under a pale November sun. Jordan insisted on brunch at a spot in Soho, neutral ground, she said, with a wry smile that didn't reach her eyes. We sat at a corner table in a cafe buzzing with weekend crowds. Yoga moms in Lululemon, tech bros nursing hangovers, and us pretending to be just two friends catching up over avocado toast. But her knee brushed mine under the table, deliberate, and every sip of my coffee burned with the memory of her mouth on mine. Tell me something real, she said suddenly, pushing her plate away, her fork tracing patterns in the remnants of eggs. Her voice was low, pitched for my ears only amid the clatter of dishes and indie folk crooning from hidden speakers. I glanced up, caught by the intensity in her gaze. Hazel flecked with gold, like autumn leaves caught in sunlight. About you. Not the polished version you show the world. I hesitated, fork midway to my mouth. Real. My life was a series of half-finished sketches and ramen dinners, gigs that paid just enough to keep the lights on in my Bushwick studio. But with her, truths bubbled up unbidden. When I was 16, my mom found my journal, I said, keeping my tone light, though the memory still twisted like a knife. It was full of drawings, of girls mostly, crushes I never acted on. She burned it in the sink, said it was poison from the city influencing me. We were in Queens then, fresh off the boat from Puerto Rico. She worked doubles at a diner to keep us afloat, and I think she was scared I'd end up like my uncle, the one who got disowned for being gay. Jordan's hand found mine under the table, a secret anchor, her thumb stroking my knuckles in slow circles. I'm sorry, she murmured, but there was no pity in it, just a shared ache, the kind that binds strangers into something more. She squeezed once, then let go as the waiter swung by with the check, her mask slipping seamlessly back into place. That's how it went those first weeks. Stolen moments sandwiched between obligations. A brush of fingers in an elevator at her office building, where glass walls overlooked the Hudson and whispered of indiscretions. Late-night walks in Central Park, bundled in scarves against the chill, debating Supreme Court rulings until our words tangled into something softer, more dangerous. I drew her in secret charcoal sketches of her profile against skyline silhouettes. Lips curved in that half-smile that undid me. She kept one tucked in her briefcase, a talisman against the drudgery of depositions and donor dinners. But the real world has teeth, and it sank them in fast. It was mid-December when Jordan's mother called during one of our study sessions at my place, code for hours curled on my thrift store couch, her head in my lap as I read aloud from dog-eared copies of Audre Lorde. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, Eleanor Hale's name flashing like a warning siren. Jordan tensed, sitting up so abruptly she nearly knocked over my mug of chamomile. I have to take it, she said, apologetic, smoothing her sweater as if it could iron out the creases in her composure. I nodded, retreating to the kitchenette to give her space, but the apartment was tiny, barely 400 square feet of exposed brick and mismatched furniture, and her voice carried, sharp and deferential. Yes, mother. The gala is next week. I'll be there, with a date. A pause, then a forced laugh that grated like nails on chalkboard. No, not seeing anyone seriously. Just focusing on the firm. My chest tightened as I rinsed dishes, suds bubbling over the sink like unspoken resentments. When she hung up, the silence stretched taut, broken only by the distant wail of an ambulance on Knickerbocker Avenue. She's planning my life like it's a merger, Jordan said finally, slumping against the doorframe, phone clutched like a lifeline. Her eyes were dull, the spark from our earlier laughter extinguished. I dried my hands and crossed to her, cupping her face gently, thumbs brushing away the phantom lines of worry. You'll tell her eventually, I said, though doubt gnawed at me. Would she? Or would this us remain a footnote, a youthful indiscretion to outgrow? She leaned into my touch, eyes closing briefly. I want to. God, Valerie, I do. But Dad's retiring soon. The partners are watching. If they find out. She trailed off, the unspoken hanging heavy. Disinheritance, exile from the empire she'd helped build. I pulled her into a hug, her body fitting against mine like a missing piece, and whispered against her hair. Then we fight. Together. It was a promise I meant, fierce and unyielding, but as she nodded into my shoulder, I felt the first fracture. Love is a rebellion, but rebellions demand blood. Christmas loomed like a guillotine. All twinkling lights and obligatory cheer masking the undercurrents of expectation. Jordan's family hosted their annual party at the Hale estate in the Hamptons. A sprawling colonial manse with icicle lights dripping from eaves and a ballroom that echoed with champagne flutes and calculated small talk. She invited me as her +1 colleague, a fiction thin as tissue paper. Wear something nice, she texted, followed by a winking emoji that belied her anxiety. I scavenged a black sheath dress from a consignment shop in Williamsburg, the kind that hugged without screaming, paired with boots scuffed from too many marches. The drive out was tense, Jordan white-knuckling the wheel of her Audi, NPR droning about tax reforms neither of us cared about. Snow dusted the Long Island Expressway, turning the world monochrome, and I reached over to squeeze her thigh. It'll be fine, I lied, knowing fine was a country we'd never visit. The estate gate swung open like jaws and inside, it was a tableau of privilege. Fur-clad women air-kissing, men in cashmere swapping stock tips, a string quartet sawing at silent night. Richard Hale held court by the fireplace, a bear of a man with Jordan's jawline and none of her warmth, clapping shoulders with a senator who'd once called queer rights a fad. Jordan introduced me smoothly. Valerie Rivera, one of our illustrators for the pro bono campaigns. And I smiled through gritted teeth, fielding questions about my portfolio, while dodging probes into my lineage. But it was Eleanor who unraveled me, gliding over in a gown of emerald silk, pearls gleaming like accusations. Darling, she cooed, kissing Jordan's cheeks, then turning to me with eyes like polished steel. Such a pretty thing. Jordan never brings friends from the office. Are you special? The word dripped with implication, and I felt Jordan stiffen beside me, her champagne flute trembling. Just talented, Jordan interjected, voice steady but fingers digging into my elbow. We escaped to the veranda, the cold slapping our faces like reality, stars pricking the velvet sky above frozen dunes. She's fishing, Jordan muttered, lighting a cigarette she bummed from a caterer, a rare vice, her hands shaking as she inhaled. I took it from her, drawing deep, the smoke curling between us like a barrier. They'll never accept this, I said quietly, exhaling toward the ocean's distant roar. Us. She stepped out the cig on the railing, turning to me with fire in her eyes. Then we make them. Or we walk away from it all. Her words hung there, a gauntlet thrown, and in that frozen moment, with party laughter spilling out like mockery, I believed her. But belief is fragile, and the real test was coming, swift, merciless, in the form of a betrayal neither of us saw. January bit hard, winds howling off the Atlantic like scorned lovers, stripping bare the lies we'd wrapped around ourselves. Back in the city, Jordan threw herself into work with a vengeance that bordered on self-destruction. 14-hour days at the firm, depositions that left her hollow-eyed and snappish. Our nights blurred into a rhythm of takeout and tentative touches, her arriving at my door with greasy bags from the halal cart on my corner, collapsing onto the bed fully clothed, me sketching beside her until sleep claimed us in tangled limbs. It was domestic, almost if you ignored the undercurrent of dread, the way she'd jolt awake at 3 a.m., whispering apologies for nightmares of boardroom inquisitions. I tried to anchor her, pulling her to galleries in Chelsea where abstract nudes evoked the curves I'd memorized in the dark. See this? I'd say, pointing to a swirl of crimson and indigo on canvas. That's us, messy, beautiful, unapologetic. She'd laugh, lean into me, but the light in her eyes flickered, dimmed by the weight of impending decisions. Richard had announced his retirement at the holiday party, toasts raised to Jordan as the natural successor. The partners were circling, vetting her life like a hostile takeover. Lunches with the managing partner, who eyed her like a thoroughbred. Discreet inquiries into her personal stability. Then came the offer, the kind that poisons dreams. Over dinner at Per Se, her father slid it across the linen like a contract for her soul. Lead counsel on a massive merger for a client bankrolling anti-LGBTQ+ legislation. "It's your ticket, Geordie," he said, using the childhood nickname that made her flinch. "Show them you're one of us." She came home to me that night reeking of aged Bordeaux and regret, slamming the door so hard my neighbor banged on the wall. "He thinks I'm still that girl," she raged, pacing my studio, kicking aside a pile of sketch pads. "The one who'll marry some banker and pop out heirs. As if loving you makes me defective." I caught her wrists gently, pulling her down to the floor with me, our backs against the bed frame. "It doesn't. It makes you human." We sat there in the dim glow of string lights, her head on my knees, my fingers combing through her hair as she unburdened. The merger would mean equity, power, a corner office with a view that could fund a lifetime of quiet activism. Refuse it, and whispers of unreliability would follow her like shadows. "What if I take it?" she murmured, voice small. "And bury us deeper? Then we dig," I replied, fierce, but inside doubt coiled like smoke. My own world was fracturing too. Gigs drying up as winter stalled protests, bills stacking like accusations. I took a side hustle illustrating for a conservative think tank's brochure, rationalizing it as just art. But each stroke felt like complicity. Jordan noticed, of course, during one of our rare free evenings, as we huddled under blankets watching old Hepburn films on my laptop. "This isn't you," she said, pausing Roman holiday mid-kiss, her finger tracing the logo on the printed proof I'd left out. "It's survival," I snapped, sharper than intended, the tension of unpaid rent fraying my edges. Hurt flashed in her eyes, quickly masked, and she pressed play, but the damage lingered. We made love that night, slow, deliberate, reclaiming each other with whispers and sighs, but it was edged with urgency, as if we sensed the clock ticking louder. The breaking point arrived unannounced, in the form of a late-night call from her sister, Amelia. Jordan's phone lit up at midnight, vibrating across the nightstand like a hornet. She answered groggily, then bolted upright, face draining of color. "What do you mean he's coming?" Pause. "Now? To the apartment." She hung up, scrambling for clothes, her movements frantic. "Dad's on his way." Amelia let slip about the friend he's seen me with too often. He thinks it's a guy, some distraction from the merger. Panic surged through me, cold and electric. Richard Hale, uninvited, descending on my hovel of a home. "What do we do?" I hissed, yanking on jeans over my sleep shorts. Jordan raked hands through her tousled hair. Eyes wild. "Act normal. He's old school. He'll buy the colleague story if we sell it." But normal was a joke. Sketch pads of her nude form scattered like evidence, our shared mug of cold tea on the sill, the air thick with the musk of us. He arrived 20 minutes later, pounding the buzzer like Judgment Day, a bottle of scotch in one meaty fist as apology for the hour. I buzzed him up, heart hammering, and met him at the door in a rumpled tee that screamed, "Not a threat." Richard filled the frame, over 6 feet of bespoke suit and bourbon breath, his gaze sweeping the space like a raid. "Valerie, right?" he boomed, thrusting the bottle at me. "Heard you're the artist type. Jordan speaks highly." She hovered behind him, arms crossed, chin lifted in defiance. We settled awkwardly on the couch, me perched on the arm, them side by side like a portrait of unease. He launched into merger talk, probing Jordan's commitment with questions laced like barbed wire. "You focused, kid? No distractions derailing the train?" She nodded, voice even, but I saw the pulse jumping in her throat. Then his eyes landed on a sketch I'd left propped against the wall, her face half-shadowed, lips parted in laughter. "That's nice work," he said slowly, picking it up, turning it toward the light. Jordan's breath caught, audible in the hush. "It's her," I blurted, stupidly honest, pulse roaring in my ears. "Inspired by her energy. Colleague perks." He chuckled, low and rumbling, but his eyes narrowed, flicking between us, the rumpled bed visible through the open door, the way her knee bounced against mine. "Energy, huh? Well, keep it professional. Family comes first." He clapped Jordan's shoulder too hard and stood. Think on the offer, Geordie. We leave tomorrow for the vineyard. Clear your head. The door clicked shut behind him and Jordan crumpled, sobs racking her frame as she curled into me. He knows, she gasped. Not everything, but enough. I held her, rocking gently, murmuring nonsense about storms passing, but as her cries quieted to shudders, a resolve hardened in her voice. I can't do this anymore. The merger, I'll take it. For now. Buy us time. It felt like surrender, her words a blade twisting slow. Time for what? To hide? To fade? I kissed her temple, tasting salt, and lied again. Whatever it takes. But in the dark, as she slept fitfully beside me, I stared at the ceiling cracks, wondering if love was a bridge or a noose, and which end I was tying. February crept in like a thief, stealing warmth from the bones of the city and the fragile peace we'd patched together. Jordan dove into the merger headfirst, her days a blur of conference calls and confidential folders stamped with NDAs that might as well have been on our relationship. She moved through my apartment like a ghost. Kisses snatched in doorways, texts at odd hours. Miss your hands. Home late, depot ran long. I filled the voids with work, any work. Murals for a queer youth center in the village, quick sketches for Instagram influencers peddling empowerment quotes that rang hollow. But the distance grew, measured not in miles but in silences. The way her laughs came shorter, her touches lighter, as if touching me burned now. Amelia became the unwitting wedge. Jordan's younger sister, 24 and freshly graduated from Yale with a poli-sci degree, crashed into our orbit uninvited, seeking big sis advice on her latest internship at a non-profit that ironically championed family values. She showed up at my studio one snowy afternoon, all wide-eyed enthusiasm and designer boots caked in slush, bearing lattes from Blue Bottle as peace offerings. Jordan said, "You're the creative one," she chirped, flopping onto my futon amid piles of colored pencils. "Show me your stuff." I obliged, wary but charmed by her earnestness, blonde waves like their mothers, but with Jordan's hazel eyes softened by naivety. As I flipped through portfolios, her questions turned personal. "How'd you two meet? She's so buttoned up. You must balance her out." I hedged, mentioning the gala, but Amelia's gaze sharpened, piecing together fragments. "She talks about you all the time. Like glows. Dad hates it. Thinks you're a bad influence, pulling her from the path." The word hung loaded and I forced a smile, but inside alarm bells clanged. That night, Jordan came home to find us mid-pizza, Amelia regaling me with tales of Hampton's summers and the time she caught their father burning old love letters from his college sweetheart, a woman she'd whispered conspiratorially, before he went full patriarch. Jordan's face tightened, a storm front rolling in. "Ames, it's late," she said, clipped, clearing plates with unnecessary force. Amelia pouted but complied, hugging me goodbye with a promise to do this again girls' night. Alone, the air crackled. "What the hell?" Jordan hissed, cornering me by the sink. "Inviting her here? She's a leak waiting to happen." Hurt flared in my chest, hot and unjust. "She showed up. And she's your sister, family, remember? Or is that just for show now?" The words landed like slaps, her eyes widening in shock before narrowing to slits. "You don't get it. One slip and it's over. For both of us." She stormed to the bedroom, slamming the door, leaving me with sudsy dishes and a gnawing void. The fight simmered into Cold War. Polite mornings over coffee, her leaving before dawn, me burying resentment in canvases splashed with angry reds. I sought solace in old friends, a poetry slam at New Eurekan Poets Cafe, where verses about forbidden loves echoed too close to home. There I met Lena, a photographer with ink-sleeved arms and a laugh like summer thunder. She bought me a drink after, her questions gentle, probing without pressure. "You look like you're carrying the world," she said, clinking glasses. For the first time in weeks I talked about hiding the half-life without naming Jordan. It felt like breathing fresh air, but guilt shadowed every word, a tether pulling me back. Jordan noticed the shift, of course, returning one evening with takeout from our favorite dim sum spot, eyes wary as she set the table. "Where were you last night?" Casual, but laced with accusation. I shrugged, plating dumplings. "Out with friends. Needed to clear my head." Silence stretched, chopsticks clicking like metronomes, until she set hers down. "Is it me? The merger? Tell me how to fix this." Her voice cracked, vulnerability cracking the armor. And I softened, reaching across to lace our fingers. It's us against them, remember? But I can't be the secret forever. She nodded, tears brimming, and pulled me onto her lap, our food forgotten. I know. I'm ending it, the hiding. After the merger closes. It was a vow, sealed with a kiss that tasted of ginger and hope, but as we moved to the bed, bodies reconnecting in urgent rhythm, I wondered if vows made in desperation held water. The merger closed in a whirlwind of handshakes and press releases. Jordan's name splashed across the post as the prodigy sealing the deal. Celebrations followed. A firm dinner at Delmonico's, where partners toasted her future, oblivious to the ring she twisted on her finger. A heirloom from Eleanor, symbol of the legacy chaining her. She texted me from the bathroom. Stuck in hell. Save me. I did, meeting her at a dive bar in the meatpacking district after, where we drowned toasts in whiskey sours, her laughter loosening like a cork from shaken champagne. But euphoria is fleeting, and karma arrived via Amelia's loose lips. 2 days later, as snow blanketed the city in deceptive purity, Jordan's phone exploded with voicemails, Eleanor's shrill and disbelieving. What is this I hear about your roommate? Photos from a neighbor, Jordy. You too, kissing on the fire escape. Jordan played it on speaker, face ashen, while I paced the length of my studio, fists clenched. The neighbor was a busybody from the building opposite, who'd snapped us during a rare unguarded moment, me laughing as Jordan nuzzled my neck, city lights blurring behind. Panic morphed to fury. Amelia told her. Jordan seethed, hurling her phone at the wall. It bounced, screen cracking like our facade. She saw the pics on some gossip thread, confronted Dad. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing eye contact. Then face it. Tell them everything. But fear etched lines around her mouth, deepening the shadows. I can't. Not yet. The firm's watching. One scandal and I'm out. She pulled away, grabbing her coat. I need space. To think. She left, door clicking softly. A sound louder than any slam, and the apartment echoed with absence. I sank to the floor, head in hands, the weight of it all crashing down. The choices we'd made, the prices we'd pay. Was this love or just a beautiful ruin? Outside, snow fell thicker, burying the world in white lies, and I realized the real storm was just beginning. March thawed the streets into slushy betrayal, mirroring the mess we'd become. Jordan vanished into the firm's labyrinth, emergency meetings, damage control disguised as strategy sessions. Her texts were sporadic, clinical. Handling it. Stay low. I obeyed, holing up in my studio, but isolation bred monsters. Voicemails from mutual acquaintances whispering about hail drama. A scathing anonymous email calling me the homewrecker gold digger. Paranoia set in. I double-locked doors, scanned faces on the subway for judgment. Lena reached out, her invites to photo exhibits a lifeline I clutched too tightly. Coffee turning to dinners, her hand on my arm lingering like a question. Guilt warred with loneliness, but the heart hungers in famine. One night, after a gallery opening where champagne flowed freer than truths, Lena walked me home, her breath fogging the air as we paused at my stoop. You're hurting, she said simply, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Her touch was electric, uncomplicated. No empires to topple, no families to appease. I leaned in, our lips meeting soft and exploratory. A balm to the raw edges Jordan had left. It lasted seconds before I pulled back, tears stinging. I can't. There's someone. Lena nodded, no recriminations, just a quiet when you're ready. Before fading into the night. The kiss haunted me. A secret heavier than the one I'd shared with Jordan. When she finally resurfaced a week later, slipping into my apartment at dawn with shadows under her eyes, I confessed in a rush, words tumbling like apologies for a crime I hadn't committed. She listened, face impassive, then crossed to the window, staring at the gray dawn over Bushwick rooftops. Do it, she said finally, voice flat. If it makes you feel alive. The permission cut deeper than anger. Her detachment a wall I'd helped build. We stood feet apart, the space between vast as oceans, until she turned, eyes glistening. But I'm fighting for us. I told Dad. Everything. The revelation landed like a grenade. Richard had exploded, screaming over speakerphone about disgrace. Throwing away legacy for a phase. Eleanor had wept, invoking God and grandbabies, while Amelia, bless her, had tried to mediate, only to be dismissed as naive. Jordan had quit the firm on the spot, her resignation email a manifesto of sorts. I won't litigate lies anymore. Not for you, not for anyone. The fallout was swift. Frozen accounts, lawyers circling like vultures, whispers in legal circles branding her unstable. She moved in with me that day. Boxes of designer suits crammed into my closet like invaders, her presence a whirlwind of determination and despair. We rebuilt in fragments. Mornings tangled in sheets, her head on my chest as sunlight slanted through blinds. Afternoons job hunting, her resume polished for boutique firms that valued ethics over billables. But the scars festered. Richard's silence was a weapon sharper than shouts. No calls, no olive branches, just a cold severance that left Jordan adrift, questioning her worth. Was it worth it? She'd murmur in the dark, tracing patterns on my skin. I'd pull her closer, whispering yes. But doubt echoed in my own voice. Betrayal struck from within when Amelia arrived unannounced, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a manila envelope like contraband. Dad's counteroffer, she said, voice trembling as she thrust it at Jordan. Inside. A check for $1 million term stark. Relocate to London, start fresh at a partner firm, sever ties with influences. Jordan laughed, bitter and broken, crumpling the paper. He thinks money erases love? But Amelia's next words shattered. He knows about your sketches, Valerie. The ones in her office. Had a PI dig. And there's photos. Of you and that photographer woman. The room tilted. Lena's kiss, captured by some lens for hire, splashed into weaponized evidence. Jordan's face crumpled, not in rage but devastation, the final thread of trust fraying. You said it was nothing, she whispered, backing away. A moment. It was, but in her eyes it was fracture, a mirror to her own compromises. I was lost, I pleaded, reaching for her, but she flinched, the envelope scattering like confetti at a funeral. Amelia hovered, torn, before slipping out with a murmured, "Fix this." We didn't speak for hours, the silence a chasm. When words came, they were daggers. Accusations of weakness, defenses laced with blame. You chose the easy path, she hurled, tears streaming. Hiding behind art while I burned bridges. I fired back. And you? Parading me as colleague, until it suited your rebellion. The fight escalated, voices rising until neighbors thumped ceilings, ending in sobs and shattered mugs. She packed a bag that night, crashing at Amelia's, leaving me with echoes and the acrid scent of regret. Days blurred into a haze of unanswered calls, my sketches turning dark, swirls of black and bruised purple, figures entwined yet tearing apart. Lena faded gracefully, her last text a gentle goodbye. Then a olive branch. Jordan's note slipped under my door, scrawled on firm letterhead. Coffee? Neutral ground. 10 a.m. Tompkins Square. I arrived early, heart in throat, finding her at a bench amid dog walkers and joggers, 2 steaming cups beside her. She looked wrecked, hair unkempt, eyes puffy, but when she stood pulling me into a fierce hug, the world righted. I'm sorry, we said in unison, laughing through tears, the sound cathartic. Over coffee, we dissected the wreckage. The PI's invasion, the kiss's irrelevance in the grand betrayal of her family. They weaponized my love for you, she said, voice stealing. No more. We vowed transparency, therapy apps downloaded, boundaries redrawn. Spring hinted at renewal. Crocuses pushing through park soil, job offers trickling for her at progressive firms. We moved to a larger place in Greenpoint, a sunlit loft with space for her yoga mat and my easel, christening it with takeout picnics on the fire escape. But healing is jagged and old wounds suppurate. Richard's final gambit came in May, a summons to his office, neutral, he claimed, for closure. Jordan went alone against my pleas, returning hours later white as death. He disowned me, she said flatly, collapsing onto our bed. On paper. Trusts retitled, will rewritten. Said it's for the family's integrity. Grief hit her like a wave, crashing in sobs that racked her frame for days. I held her through it, whispering of new families we'd forge, but inside fury simmered. At him, at the system that enabled such cruelty. The climax crested at pride, ironically. We marched together, rainbows fluttering amid throngs on Fifth Avenue. Her hand in mine public for the first time. Chants of love is love pulsed like heartbeats, but midway, a counter-protester shoved through. face twisted in hate, sign proclaiming God hates sinners. He targeted Jordan, spitting daddy's little traitor. Recognition dawning. She froze, grip slackening, but I stepped forward, voice steady. Back off. She's free now. The crowd surged, security intervening, but the encounter lingered, a bruise on our triumph. That night, in our loft with city fireworks blooming outside, Jordan turned to me, eyes fierce. I choose us. Every time. We made love under the glow, slow and affirming, bodies mapping forgiveness. But as summer beckoned, whispers of doubt persisted. Her new job's conservative clients, my rising gigs pulling me to LA for a month. The cost of our awakening tallied high. Lost fortunes, fractured bloodlines, hearts scarred but beating. In the quiet aftermath, as we lay spent and sated, Jordan traced my collarbone, voice soft. Was it worth the ruin? In the end, when the dust of our battles settled into the quiet rhythms of survival, shared grocery lists scribbled on fridge magnets, her laughter echoing in our loft as she burned dinner again, my sketches adorning walls we'd painted together on a whim, was choosing authenticity over acceptance of victory, or just another pretty scar we wore like badges of a war no one else could see.